Hey, this is Brooke, functional medicine dietitian specializing in fertility, and this is the Fertility Dietitian podcast, where I help you uncover the barriers that are preventing you from optimizing your fertility and teach you how to work with your body to finally take home a healthy baby. Each week, I will be diving into different topics on fertility and sharing my perspective on physiology, metabolic health, nutrition, and lifestyle approaches that have helped hundreds of couples get pregnant even after years of heartache. My goal is to empower you with the knowledge you need to take back control of your fertility. Happy listening. I am so excited to share another very special client story. Meghann and her husband trusted me to help them uncover the barriers that were leading to recurrent loss when their doctors were constantly blaming her age and pushing IVF as the only option. They trusted the process, and we were able to put all of the pieces together. Meghann is 26 weeks along with a healthy baby boy at 41 years old, no IVF needed. I hope you find inspiration and hope in her story. Hello, and welcome back to the Fertility Dietitian podcast. Today, I have a very special guest, Meghann, who I had the pleasure of working with. So she's here to share her story today. She does have a story of recurrent loss, which I know, unfortunately, so many of you can relate to. So I hope that you find her story inspiring, and I hope it gives you some hope on your fertility journey as well. Hi, Meghann. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, Brooke. Thank you so much for having me. I feel really honored to be here.
I'm so honored that you chose me to be a part of your fertility journey. So let's take a big step back, and I'd love if you're willing to share with those listening to hear what your fertility journey looked like before we met.
Absolutely. So, our journey started about 3 years ago. My husband and I decided to start the next step of expanding a family. I was what you would call post maternal age, according to my doctors, when we decided to do this. I was about 38, almost 39 years old. And we'd been trying for about 5 or 6 months, and our doctors recommended that we fast track into IUI because of my age and just where we were at. So we went into IUI. I did 3 rounds of IUI first until our third round was successful. And unfortunately, early on in that pregnancy, at about 7 weeks, we found out that it was no longer viable. So that was very disappointing, but tried to stay hopeful at the fact that we had gotten pregnant. Um, our doctors we met with right then kind of were just telling us already about IVF. Hey, we saw 3 more rounds that insurance would cover for IUI, but IVF was most likely the next step that would happen. That was kind of a lot to hear, but wasn't really ready to accept that. Even though I think IVF is a fantastic tool and might be something in our future that we rely on. But just at that time, I wasn't really ready to accept that or hear that. So we went back to IUI probably about whew, 3 or 4 months after our loss. I kind of had to wait for my cycle to regulate and just kind of grieve, and then felt ready to start that back up again. So we had 2 more unsuccessful rounds of IUI, and I just needed to take a break. I needed to stop, like, my mental health. Just, it was taxing on my body. I felt like my cycles were all out of whack. And that's when I talked to my cousin, shout out to Caitlin, who had worked with you before and just spoke so highly of you. And we were ready to try anything. Um, Again, our doctors were pushing for IVF, and my husband and I were not ready to take that next step, either financially or just mentally. And so we decided to reach out to you, Brooke. Um, yeah, and so that's kind of the backstory of where I was up until we sat down with you.
Yes. Yeah. So you had already gone through a lot with fertility doctors and support in that kind of what I call conventional fertility arena. Um, and they were kind of pushing you in a direction you weren't quite ready for. Do you feel like your age had a big deal to, or was a big reason that they were
That
encouraging
was
that?
what was responded to us. You know, your post-maternal age. I love they don't say geriatric anymore. So it was everything was your post-maternal age. This happens. Hey, you know what? 50-50 chance. Everything else looked great in my body, according to my doctors. You know, I had a normal uterus, my levels look regulated. Not a lot of testing was done, to be honest. I hadn't had any blood work, just checking my TSH levels and things like that. But otherwise, it was just, yep, you're 38, 39. This is going to happen. So I just kind of was like feeling, and there were other things I know we might talk about that were going on with my health that I was just kind of like concerned about. And I think that's kind of what you touched on that were the next steps.
Yeah, yeah. So once we talked, and you guys were ready to make the next step and invest in the Master Your Fertility program, I guess what made you take that next step after we spoke? What did you feel like was going to potentially be different about working together?
Well, first of all, you really listened, and I just felt so supported right away, so did my husband as well, and the part about digging deeper, you really talked about, like, finding kind of where's the root of this all coming from? Like, why did this miscarriage happen? You know, what's going on in your whole body, not just your uterus, but, like, what is going on all around. And so I think just exploring the testing, and digging deeper is really what just hooked us, to take that next step.
Yes, I love that. That is my favorite part of of getting to work with clients, for just exploring barriers that are getting in the way of how your body is able to support reproduction. Like age is a piece of the puzzle, but it's actually a fairly small piece of the puzzle when you're still cycling. And heck, even if you are premenopausal and not quite cycling normally, there's often a lot that we can uncover to support egg quality and reproductive environment for best outcomes possible. And the goal is always to try to, support natural conception, but we always have tools in our back pocket too if we need to revisit them. What do you feel like were some of the biggest things you learned from the deeper dive testing that we did together?
Well, I know something I had talked about with you, some things I was noticing with my body. It was waking up every night at 2 AM like clockwork. I wasn't feeling, like, too stressed at work, but it was just, like, every night I was waking up, and every morning it was a rush when I'd get up. Something was going on with my gut, something not pretty. It was just every morning, like clockwork, a rush to the restroom. And so I know when you tested, you did blood, you did stool, and you did hair sample, which was amazing. And I've talked to friends about people didn't even know that was something that you could test, and how that goes back months and looks back. Um, and I think after you found that out, the two things that really stood up to me were the gut health and also the mineral depletion that was happening in my body. And those were 2 big shockers and just how that was connected to my fertility, and that was something we had no idea about. So, that was just so eye-opening, and you giving us the tools and the diet and the supplements and supporting that and kind of tailoring a little protocol or a little I'm trying to find what the right word is, but created something that we could follow, and that really supported those changes that we saw.
Yes, definitely. The gut testing is always insightful. Even when we're not having symptoms, I typically find barriers in the gut in some fashion. But for you, Megan, once we started implementing nutrition and supplement changes, how did your gut symptoms change?
It was it was a miraculous. I couldn't believe it. I mean, and that was probably the quickest change I found in my body, just how I was having normal bowel movements. I was not waking up and rushing. It was just like typical and it seemed healthy. And also the supplements and the minerals that my body were now able to take in, I was sleeping through the night, and it just like my whole world was changing with my body and in a positive way. And I feel like too that also really helped with my cycles. And I was almost able to like my cycles became clockwork, like cervical mucus that you talked about, all these things I was starting to see as a result of my new diet that you'd helped me with and the supplements and just all these changes.
Yes, I love that. The gut is such a major foundation. Like if we are not digesting and absorbing our foods or even our supplements appropriately, we're not getting the tools or the resources in the form of vitamins and minerals to support all things hormonal health. And fertility is such an energy intensive process. So, like reproduction as a whole, like that whole environment requires so much energy. So, if we're not able to get the resources to create that energy from our food because there's barriers in our gut, there's going to be all sorts of barriers to how our body's able to support fertility. So, those symptom changes are really fun to see because, like you mentioned, they happen pretty quickly, and it can be really reassuring that things are on the right track as far as how your body's able to support fertility again. You also mentioned the hair testing. So, with most of my clients, I'm doing HTMAs, which are hair tissue mineral analysis tests, which is a deep dive look into mineral status inside our cells. And that is really significant for fertility because they play a major role in energy production in every cell in our body. And because fertility is such an energy intensive process, if our minerals are off, energy is going to struggle, fertility is going to struggle in one way or another. And on Megan's initial hair analysis that we did, we were seeing a lot of depletion and a lot of stress can result, like internal stress can result from a large amount of depletion. So, shifting the gut to get more absorption of nutrients from the foods and supplements that she's taking in was a really big piece of the puzzle for her next steps for Megan. Megan, how on like a day to day basis, how much time do you feel like these changes took? Do you feel like they took a lot of time or they became kind of habits
It
pretty
became a
quickly?
habit. It became, I think, the initial just grocery shop, first time I was like, "Okay, I really have to shift some things," and I really wasn't eating, I wanna say, unhealthy, but I wasn't getting the same amount of the amount of protein that I should be getting every day. I wasn't having the sides that I should be including in my meals. So it was just more of just kind of being more mindful and thoughtful when I was grocery shopping. But and just my work as a teacher lent himself to, like, I'd wake up and just have a nice breakfast, and whereas before, it was running out the door just with a cup of coffee. I was skipping breakfast. That was something that we talked about was that needed to change. So just sitting down, being mindful of chewing, taking my time, having a nice full protein breakfast. At lunch, I had my lunch all ready to go and then dinner. And so it became a habit, and it's a habit that even now my husband and I have carried on post working with you, and it's something I think I'll carry on the rest of my life. It just like why haven't I been doing this for longer?
I love that. It should be sustainable. It should absolutely be sustainable. You can get amazing long term benefits from all of those changes. So that is awesome. Um, All right. So you started implementing these changes and started seeing some improvements in your gut and your cycle changes, which eventually led to a positive pregnancy test. And tell us about that first positive pregnancy test that you had after we started working together.
So that happened. We had started working with you in the, I want to say the winter, December, and that following early fall, we got a positive pregnancy test. We couldn't believe it. After all those years of trying on our own and then failed IUI, a positive IUI, just like boom, working with Brooke for like 6 months and we're seeing a positive pregnancy test. So that was, we were so excited. And then, unfortunately, a few months later, we found out that we had another loss. This time around the same time, 7 or 8 weeks. So again, a lot of disappointment. But as I'm sure we'll talk about, working with you, we found out a lot more information about that loss.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. So we did some early blood work with that pregnancy. And we learned that your thyroid was not responding very supportive or very in a very helpful way once conception happened. So you needed some thyroid support, right?
Yes.
Moving forward. And so you were able to get on medication to support your thyroid. And then what happened?
Yeah. So and one of the things I want to mention is, first of all, Cooper and I mean, we believe in medicine. We trust our doctors and have had wonderful relationships also with our doctors. However, after that second pregnancy, while working with you, you were the one that recommended that we need to ask for blood work on my thyroid, my TSH, my T4, HCG. That is not something that was offered to us in my first pregnancy, nor was it mentioned to us in our second pregnancy. So you really taught us and showed us how to advocate for ourselves. These were things that I did not know that I could ask for. And our doctors happily did it. But it's just, I had to ask. So that was something we weren't even sure about. So we asked for those. And as you mentioned, our levels or my levels for my thyroid had skyrocketed as soon as I got pregnant. And they put me on levothyroxine and it came down a little bit because we retested, but it didn't come down much. So after our loss, when we spoke with the doctors, they didn't really touch on the thyroid when we asked about that. They were just, again, you're now almost 40 years old, or I was 40 years old at the time. And everything kind of came back to my age. And so throughout this whole process, too, that has been on my mind, and I know I brought that up with Brooke with everything is like, "I'm too old. Am I too old? Am I too old?" And you were just so kind and reassuring and supportive of just reminding us of, like, that's just a small piece. Like, this isn't just about age. There's so much more this is about. So, again, IVF was the next step that was recommended, and just my husband and I just weren't ready again for that. It didn't seem like it was the right fit or the next step yet for us. So I stayed on levothyroxine. They increased my dosage a little bit, and we just kind of moved forward from there.
Yeah. Yeah, that is such an important point. Thyroid is not standard to look at early pregnancy, but I highly recommend for anybody listening to this, if you have struggled to get pregnant for some time, or if you do have a history of loss, get early blood labs. Like as soon as you find out that you're pregnant, make a phone call, get them scheduled. Thyroid and progesterone are two labs that are fixable if we know about them early on. And sometimes we can get medication on board. A lot of times we can early enough to support that pregnancy. But as Megan mentioned, the dose was off a little bit. The thyroid still remained a little elevated, and that's most likely, highly likely, why unfortunately there was another loss with that second pregnancy. That armed us with more information for how to support her moving forward for another pregnancy, which did come. Meghann maintained her lifestyle changes with nutrition and everything to recover from that loss. And tell us what happened next.
So that was our on about that happened. We found out in December that pregnancy was no longer viable, and we most likely as a result of the thyroid imbalance. And when I had had my first miscarriage, it had taken about like during IUI, we were not yet working with Brooke. It took about 4 months for my body to kind of regulate and get back on a cycle that deemed in my mind like in a normal, typical cycle, even though it probably was not. Anyway, fast forward after this miscarriage, I had one, my cycle started up like clockwork, clean, amazing, on schedule the next month after a miscarriage. And then I found out I was pregnant again the following month. So within 2 months, less than 2 months, I was pregnant again. And I think that had everything to do with all the work that we'd been doing with Brooke and just regulating my body, getting my thyroid under control now, and just finding these little pieces and putting them together. But I just could not believe how um, my cycle was just right back on track after something like that.
Yeah, that's amazing. That recovery time speaks volumes to how safe your body was feeling and how nourished it was feeling, to pick right back up and be ready for supporting a pregnancy again. So you were already on the thyroid medication that
Yes.
was being monitored.
We were on thyroid. We knew this time to ask right away, as you'd advocated for us before. So we asked for early blood work. Our doctors were like, sure, no problem. We got all that same blood work. And this time, I know this is probably hard for a lot of people to hear, especially who have gone through this, but we found out probably within like at 5 weeks, I started to miscarry naturally. Um, and we were just like, what? I had a blighted ovum and we were devastated. And I was just starting to think, my doctors, oh, this is what happens when you're 40. It's 50-50 chance and my egg quality and all the same things that I'd heard before. And they just wanted to continue the conveyor belt of the next step is IVF. Like, we gotta go. This needs to happen. And my husband and I were just talking, like everything we'd worked with Brooke. I'm like, there's got to be we keep getting pregnant. There's got to be something missing. And as Brooke, you had mentioned how important it was to have thyroid and progesterone tested, and that is not yet something, our progesterone, that had been discussed with our doctors. Um, as there's one more step in the story, but that once again was not something that had been tested. And my thyroid was still not where it needed to be in this third pregnancy loss. So we were still looking at that, and we kind of sat back down with you after that third loss.
Yeah, yeah, and I think we kinda agreed on being on progesterone the next time you got that positive pregnancy test, which progesterone definitely can support the pregnancy. It can also support the thyroid too and supporting, like, that thyroid medication and working a little bit more efficiently since that had kind of continued to not balance out completely with the last 2, conceptions. So I'm trying to remember. Was it at that point, did we do some retesting
No, we had
too?
retested
Was it
in between, I think, my first after my first,
First, okay.
we had done retesting before I got pregnant with you my first time. I wanna say I retested
Okay.
in that summer, and we'd found a lot of positive changes with my gut, my mineral intake, everything was, like, leveling out. And then we set so after this 3rd miscarriage, once again, I had the following month, my cycle was right on time, cervical mucus like, we couldn't believe how quickly my body bounced back, and the following month after that, I got another positive pregnancy test, my fourth one, and that's when
Yes.
we wrote to you, I was like, "Brooke, I can't believe it. I'm not gonna believe this. I'm pregnant again." And you said, "Go in right now, get your thyroid, get progesterone." And we asked for progesterone testing and our thyroid testing, and our doctors happily complied, and they got me on progesterone right away. And here we are now.
Here we are now. How far along are you, Megan?
We are 26 weeks with a healthy baby boy on his way in February. So
Yay.
it's amazing. It's been a really difficult journey, but having you, I can't say it without probably getting emotional, but you have been such a vital piece in all of this. And my husband and I talk about this. If we had not worked with you, this would not have happened. Like it could have just continued on, or it could have happened through IVF, but this happened naturally. I just had my 41st birthday this summer. I have had a very smooth pregnancy. We were able to travel this summer. Like we're still doing things. And I know one of the biggest things you said throughout all of this was just about finding joy still and every day and having that joy. And that's something that we've really held on to through all of this. And just having you advocate for us and just how it's been so supportive in the mental health piece through all of this. But it's amazing how you've helped put this puzzle together and helped us get where we are today.
I'm so excited for you guys and always makes me emotional. Any pregnancy announcement does, but after recurrent loss and making it to this point, it's such a major milestone. Am always honored to be part of your support team and supporting just how you're advocating for labs and medications that are so crucial for supporting a healthy pregnancy. So excited for these next steps for you guys. I mean, sometimes it's really unfortunate, but we do have to learn along the way. Megan talked about all the positive changes that she was seeing initially when we were working together, but it wasn't until that retesting period and then following that retesting period that she got that BFP, that positive pregnancy test after we had worked together that allowed us to gather even more information about how her body shifting. All sorts of things shift during pregnancy. And sometimes it takes some time to figure out what exactly the right support is going to need. So, egg quality had definitely changed. Reproductive environment had definitely changed in such a positive way to allow Megan to get those positive pregnancy tests continuously after we had worked together. And then once those last puzzle pieces were in place at the right doses together, here we are. Here we
We are.
are. Healthy baby boy on the way. Do you have any advice for other women or couples that might be in a similar place to where you were before we started working together?
Yeah. I mean, it's a difficult club to be part of, having a loss, but when people say you're not alone, you really are not. I mean, am blown away by how many women have been up have had a loss and experienced loss and just, It's not something you really talk about, but just knowing that you can get through it and to not give up and the hope that there is. And also just really be an advocate for yourself. Just that's something you've really taught me. And again, we trust our doctors. Our doctors have been great, but they're kind of just focused on what they're experts on with your body. And just there's so much more I've learned of just how connected everything is, and just even the mental health piece of having somebody to talk to who's been through this has been really helpful for myself. And just working with you just every time, just the hope that you had of, nope, we're moving in the right direction. And just whenever I'd start to get, oh, maybe it's just not meant to be. And you just picked us back up like, nope, this is going to happen. Just hold on. And it did.
Yes. So inspiring. And don't give up or fall into the trap that it's all about your age as
Mhm.
something I would add to that. I know Megan
Right.
has mentioned that a couple of times through this conversation that her providers were kind of stuck on that age piece. It makes sense, statistics as a whole, but I see all the time women that have better fertility in their 40s than they did in their 30s, just based on how they're nourishing their bodies, how much more aware of what's going on in their body they are, and having the tools to shift that can make all of the difference in how your body's supporting reproduction as a whole. And we didn't talk much about this, but Megan's husband was very supportive and definitely a big part of this too. He made his own changes and supported his fertility. It always takes two, so we can't forget the male side of the puzzle either. So if you are listening to this and your partner is not quite on board with making those changes, is definitely a big area to change on that side as well. One last question. What would you tell other women that might be on the fence of taking kind of a more alternative route and maybe exploring the nutrition and lifestyle areas more for fertility?
Do it. I mean, it's you're nothing but good changes are going to happen. These are changes also that we've implemented for the rest of our lives, and these are changes I'm hopefully gonna carry on with our expanding family. And financially, this was not a big financial stressor comparatively to IUI, IVF. This is something, definitely try this first and find out what those barriers are, like you said. And, that's even more information if you need to take the next step to IVF. But this is such, I wish we had done this first before even IUI. Or I just wish I would have done this first, even if I had not been trying to actively get pregnant, just to change these positive things. And my body is so healthy now, and I've just been sleeping through the nights and having regular bowel movements, and it's just been such a positive change altogether.
I love that. For some reason, I just remembered this, but were you having nightmares before as well?
Yes, I was. I was having nightmares, and that was something that, like, every night I'm like, "Is there what is something that's wrong with me?" And you explained how my body even was just basically in fight or flight because of my mineral depletion, and it made sense, and those nightmares, like, have gone away. Now I just have, like, work dreams, like typical work dreams or, things like that. But yeah, that was something that was definitely happening early during that time as well before working with you.
Funny. Funny. Yes. So I love that. The Master Your Fertility program that Megan worked with me through is my private coaching program. And it is an investment, but it is an investment in your long term health as well as your fertility. And as Megan mentioned, these are changes that are meant to be sustainable and support your day to day, hopefully getting you that healthy baby too. And I love to hear that you're thinking about how you're going to pass these changes on to your baby boy who will be here shortly after the holidays. So generational health is definitely starts with that preconception phase and makes such a big difference on the lifelong health of your tiny human, even before they're here and able to actually implement those habits themselves. So it's super, super exciting. And Meghann, thank you so much for being here and sharing your story. I know it's going to be so helpful for so many others that are experiencing um, or have been experiencing a similar journey with recurrent loss.
Thank you for having me and letting me share. It's just can't give up hope. It happens. I couldn't believe it.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Fertility Dietitian podcast. If you enjoyed it, please leave a review to let me know what topics you want more of or less of. If you want to keep learning, subscribe at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Check out my website for more info on my private coaching program, Master Your Fertility, or my membership community, Fertility Blueprint. And don't forget my digital store. Come say hi on YouTube and Instagram. See you in the next episode.